What happens when a single moment completely flips the script on an entire NBA game? What happens when the officials make a call so controversial that it leaves LeBron James absolutely speechless? Well, if you think you know the answer to that question, you're about to be shocked, because what went down between the Lakers and the Hornets wasn't just another regular season game. This was a masterclass in how one decision can destroy momentum, crush championship dreams, and leave even the most composed superstars questioning everything they thought they knew about fairness in professional basketball. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been covering the NBA for years, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that what I'm about to show you will change how you view officiating in this league forever. The Lakers walked into this game riding high with 6 wins in their last 7 contests before the All-Star break. They had momentum. They had confidence. They had everything going their way until one referee decided to completely alter the trajectory of their season with a call so questionable that it had LeBron James delivering a reaction that spoke volumes without him saying a single word. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. This wasn't just any game. This was the Lakers' first contest after the All-Star weekend, a time when championship contenders are supposed to come back refreshed and ready to make their playoff push. Instead, what we witnessed was a complete meltdown that started with one player getting ejected for something that happens in literally every single NBA game across the country. Now, before we dive into the shocking details of what actually happened on that court, let me give you some context that will make this story even more unbelievable. Austin Reaves, the Lakers guard who became the center of this controversy, had never been ejected from an NBA game in his entire 4-year career. This is a player known for his composure, his basketball IQ, and his ability to stay focused under pressure. So, when I tell you that what happened next defied every expectation anyone could have had, you'll understand why LeBron's reaction was so telling. The Lakers were in complete control of this game. They had built a solid 8-point lead with just 3 minutes left in the third quarter, and everything was going according to plan. The Hornets, who had won only one of their previous 10 games, looked like they were about to suffer another defeat. The Lakers were executing their offensive sets perfectly, their defense was locked in, and the momentum was entirely on their side. That's when referee Rodney Mott made a decision that would change everything. Austin Reaves, frustrated by what he perceived as a missed call, approached the official to voice his concerns. Now, here's where this gets interesting, and this is something that 99% of casual NBA fans don't understand about the officiating process. Players argue with referees constantly throughout every single game. It's part of the emotional fabric of professional basketball. Veterans like LeBron James, Chris Paul, and Draymond Green have built entire careers while maintaining ongoing dialogues with officials during games. But what happened to Austin Reaves was different. After receiving his first technical foul for his initial complaint, something occurred that shocked everyone in the arena, including his own teammates. Reaves was hit with a second technical foul almost immediately, resulting in an automatic ejection that sent him to the locker room with crucial minutes still remaining in the contest. The timing of this ejection couldn't have been worse for the Lakers. They were in the middle of extending their lead, their offensive rhythm was clicking, and Reaves himself was having a solid performance that was helping anchor their game plan. Suddenly, without warning, one of their key contributors was walking off the court, shaking his head in disbelief at what had just transpired. But here's where LeBron James enters this story, and his reaction tells you everything you need to know about how egregious this officiating decision really was. After the game, when reporters asked LeBron about what happened to his teammate, his response was measured but loaded with meaning. James explained that according to the referee, Reaves had used profanity multiple times, crossing some invisible line that warranted immediate ejection from the game. However, LeBron's account of what actually happened painted a completely different picture. He revealed that Reeves had used strong language initially, which resulted in the first technical foul, but then had backed away and stopped engaging with the official. According to LeBron, the referee mistakenly believed that Reeves had continued his verbal protest when, in reality, the player had already moved on and was trying to refocus on the game. This is where LeBron's leadership and protective instincts toward his teammates became crystal clear. Rather than throwing Reeves under the bus or accepting the official's version of events, James stood firmly behind his player and questioned the timing and justification of the ejection. His words carried the weight of someone who has played in over 1,400 regular season games and understands the difference between normal emotional expression and behavior that truly warrants removal from a contest. What makes LeBron's reaction even more significant is the context of his own relationship with officiating throughout his career. This is a player who has been technical fouled, flagrant fouled, and criticized by referees countless times over 2 decades in the league. When someone with his experience and perspective questions an official's decision-making process, it carries enormous credibility within basketball circles. The immediate impact of Reeves' ejection on the Lakers was devastating and visible to anyone watching the game. Within moments of losing their teammate, the entire energy of the contest shifted dramatically. The Lakers, who had been dictating the pace and controlling the flow of the game, suddenly looked disjointed and confused. Their offensive sets broke down, their defensive rotations became sloppy, and their communication on the court deteriorated rapidly. Meanwhile, the Charlotte Hornets, who had been struggling to find any offensive rhythm throughout the first 3 quarters, suddenly discovered a spark that would fuel an incredible comeback. What happened next was one of the most dramatic momentum swings you'll see in professional basketball, and it all stemmed from that controversial ejection that left LeBron James questioning the consistency and fairness of NBA officiating. The Hornets capitalized on the Lakers' confusion and emotional deflation by going on a run that completely changed the trajectory of the contest. They scored 18 of the next 19 points, turning what had been a comfortable Lakers lead into a deficit that would ultimately cost them the game. This wasn't just a normal run where shots happened to fall and defensive stops were made. This was a complete psychological breakdown by the Lakers that can be traced directly back to the moment their teammate was ejected from the contest. Austin Reeves himself, when asked about the incident after the game, provided insight that made the entire situation even more questionable. He admitted that while he understood the first technical foul, the second one caught him completely off guard because he believed he had stopped engaging with the official. His confusion was genuine, and his explanation aligned perfectly with LeBron's account of what had actually transpired during those crucial moments. But Reeves also revealed something that highlighted a much larger problem with NBA officiating consistency. He pointed out that in his 4 years in the league, he had witnessed other players say far worse things to referees without facing any consequences. But when it comes from someone unexpected, the officials tend to react more harshly. This observation speaks to a systemic issue within the officiating ranks that goes far beyond just this single controversial call. What Reeves was describing is something that veteran players and coaches have whispered about for years, but rarely discuss publicly. There's an unwritten hierarchy in how officials treat different players, and when someone steps outside their perceived role or speaks up in a way that catches referees off guard, the consequences can be swift and severe. This isn't just speculation, folks. This is a pattern that anyone who follows the league closely has witnessed time and time again. The psychological impact of this ejection extended far beyond just losing one player from the rotation. When you watch the footage of what happened immediately after Reeves left the court, you can see the Lakers players looking around at each other with confusion and frustration written all over their faces. They weren't just dealing with being down a man. They were processing the injustice of what they had witnessed, and that mental distraction became a cancer that spread through their entire game plan. LeBron James, being the veteran leader that he is, tried to rally his troops and refocus their energy on the task at hand. But you could see in his body language that even he was struggling to process what had just occurred. This is a player who has been in every conceivable high-pressure situation throughout his career. Yet, even he seemed rattled by the arbitrary nature of this officiating decision. The Hornets, meanwhile, recognized this gift they had been handed and pounced on it with the desperation of a team that had been struggling for weeks. They attacked the basket more aggressively. They pressed the Lakers defensively, and they played with an energy that had been missing from their recent performances. When you get a psychological advantage like this in professional sports, experienced teams know exactly how to maximize it. What followed was a masterclass in how momentum can completely flip the script in professional basketball. The Lakers went from looking like a well-oiled machine executing their offensive sets to appearing like a group of individuals who had never played together before. Their passes became sloppy, their shot selection deteriorated, and their defensive communication broke down entirely. But here's what makes this story even more infuriating for Lakers fans and basketball purists alike. This wasn't just any game where you could shrug off a loss and move on to the next contest. This was their first game back after the All-Star break, a time when championship contenders are supposed to establish their identity for the final stretch of the regular season. Instead of building momentum toward the playoffs, they were left questioning whether they could trust the officials to call a fair game when it mattered most. The ripple effects of this controversial ejection extended well beyond the final score. You could see it in the post-game interviews, where Lakers players were choosing their words carefully to avoid saying anything that might result in fines from the league office. You could hear it in the frustration in their voices as they tried to explain how a game they had under control slipped away due to circumstances beyond their control. LeBron's measured response in those post-game interviews revealed everything you need to know about his leadership philosophy and his understanding of how the league operates. Rather than exploding with anger or making inflammatory statements that would grab headlines, he chose to present the facts as he saw them and let people draw their own conclusions. This approach was far more damaging to the officiating crew than any emotional outburst could have been. The veteran superstar's explanation of what the referee told him about the ejection revealed inconsistencies in the official's account that raised serious questions about the decision-making process. When LeBron calmly stated that the referee claimed Reeves had used profanity 3 times, but then explained that his teammate had actually backed away after the first incident, it painted a picture of an official who was either confused about what had actually happened or was doubling down on a mistake. This type of measured criticism from a player of LeBron's stature carries enormous weight within NBA circles. When someone who has played at the highest level for over 2 decades questions an official's judgment, it forces people throughout the league to take notice. Front office executives, other players, and even the officiating department itself have to acknowledge that there might be a problem with how these situations are being handled. The aftermath of this game created conversations that extended far beyond just the Lakers organization. Players around the league began sharing their own experiences with inconsistent officiating, and fans started paying closer attention to how different players are treated by referees in similar situations. What had started as one controversial call in one regular season game had evolved into a league-wide discussion about fairness and consistency. For the Lakers specifically, this loss represented more than just a setback in the standings. It was a reminder that their championship aspirations could be derailed by factors completely outside their control, and that realization had to be both frustrating and terrifying for a team with legitimate title hopes. When you're building towards something as significant as an NBA championship, every game matters, and losing one due to questionable officiating feels like robbery. The timing of this controversy couldn't have been worse for a Lakers team that had been building serious momentum heading into the final stretch of the regular season. They had found their rhythm. Their key players were healthy and contributing, and their chemistry was clicking at exactly the right time. Then, in an instant, all of that progress was undermined by a decision that left everyone associated with the organization questioning what they had just witnessed. They had just witnessed. But the most telling aspect of this entire situation wasn't what happened during the game itself. It was what came after, when the dust had settled and people had time to process what they had witnessed. Austin Reaves, sitting in that locker room after his first career ejection, had to come to terms with the fact that his season could potentially be defined by a moment that was completely out of his control. This is a player who had worked his entire life to reach this level, and suddenly he was being painted as someone who couldn't control his emotions when the reality was far different. The psychological warfare aspect of what occurred cannot be understated. When officials make decisions that appear arbitrary or inconsistent, it creates an environment where players begin second-guessing every interaction they have with referees throughout the remainder of the season. This mental burden affects not just the individual player involved, but the entire team's approach to how they communicate with officials moving forward. Think about what this means for the Lakers as they navigate the rest of their campaign. Every time Austin Reaves feels the need to question a call or express frustration with an official's decision, he'll have to weigh whether that expression is worth the risk of another ejection. That hesitation, that mental calculation that now has to occur in split seconds during high-pressure moments, fundamentally changes how a player approaches the game. The broader implications extend beyond just one player's relationship with the officiating crew. When teammates witness what they perceive as unfair treatment of one of their own, it creates a collective sense of injustice that can either fuel a team's determination or poison their mindset depending on how they choose to process it. In this case, you could see the Lakers struggling with both emotions simultaneously. LeBron James, with all his experience and wisdom, understood that his response to this situation would set the tone for how his entire organization moved forward. His careful choice of words in those post-game interviews wasn't just about protecting his teammate. It was about maintaining his team's mental state while still making it clear that what they had experienced was unacceptable. This delicate balance between standing up for principle and avoiding further controversy is something only a veteran leader can navigate effectively. The statistical impact of losing Austin Reaves at that crucial juncture goes beyond just removing one player from the rotation. Reaves had been playing solid basketball leading up to his ejection, contributing to the Lakers' offensive flow and defensive schemes in ways that don't always show up in the box score. When you suddenly remove a key component from a well-functioning system, the ripple effects touch every aspect of how the team operates. What made the Lakers' collapse even more painful to witness was how preventable it felt. This wasn't a situation where they were outplayed by superior talent or outcoached by a better game plan. They were undone by a series of events that began with an officiating decision that appeared to contradict the standard of consistency that professional sports demands. The randomness of it all made the loss feel particularly cruel. The Charlotte Hornets, to their credit, recognized the opportunity that had been presented to them and executed their comeback with the precision of a team that had nothing left to lose. They understood that momentum shifts like this are rare gifts in professional basketball, and they maximized every possession that followed the controversial ejection. Their players attacked with renewed energy, their coaching staff made tactical adjustments, and their entire organization embraced the chaos that had been created. But even as the Hornets celebrated their comeback victory, there was an underlying acknowledgement that the circumstances surrounding their win were unusual. Players and coaches throughout the league understand the difference between earning a victory through superior play and benefiting from external factors that shift the competitive balance. This wasn't to diminish their achievement, but rather to recognize the complex nature of how this particular game unfolded. So there you have it, folks. One controversial ejection, one questionable call, and suddenly a championship contender's season hangs in the balance. LeBron's measured reaction told us everything we needed to know about the injustice that unfolded that night. When the league's most experienced voice questions the consistency of officiating, we all need to listen. Drop your thoughts below about whether the NBA needs to address these officiating inconsistencies before they decide another team's playoff fate.